Welcome to Lesson 13, the perfect. You've learned the Kal active participle and the Kal passive participle, each with their respective form and functions. This is a third verbal form. You'll remember the independent pronouns, for instance, the first person ani or anochi, first plural anachnu, the second person subject pronouns with their characteristic tav, t. These will help us to recognize some of the affirmatives of the perfect. For instance, here in malachti, I am king, a verbal form ending in t, which reminds us of the e of ani or anochi. These are the affirmatives of the perfect. We don't call them suffixes because we're not putting them on words. A suffix is something we put on a word that already exists. These are affirmatives of the perfect, that is, they are the endings of words. These can't be removed from the form that they're on and leave anything sensical. They're just placed on the verbal root. But you can see their resemblance, at least in many cases, to the independent pronouns. So, for the verb shamar, to watch or observe or keep, shamar, shamara, shamarta, shamart, shamarti, shamaru, shamartem, shamarten, shamarnu. Again, attend to the resemblance to at least some of the independent pronouns. Another verbal root, katav, to write or inscribe, katav, katava, katavta, and so on. Notice first that the third masculine singular has no affirmative. That's how you know the third masculine singular. That is also the dictionary form, the lexicon form of any verbal root. Note too that some forms have penultimate stress. Katavta, katavti, katavnu, whereas the rest have ultimate stress. The Hebrew verbs are marked not for time but for aspect. What does that mean? It means that the perfective aspect is not past tense. Rather, it invites the hearer to envision the action as a complete whole, whether in the past, present, or future. Think, for example, of being in a helicopter over a parade so you can see the whole parade at once as a complete thing. The imperfective aspect, which we'll learn on another day, by contrast, invites the hearer to envision the action as it develops progressively, as, for example, a bystander on the street might see the beginning of the parade come into view, some point in the middle of the parade as it goes by, or the tail end of the parade as it recedes, but not the parade as a whole. That said, because much of our biblical text is narrative, especially much of what we learn in elementary Hebrew is narrative, most often the perfect will be part of a narrative that's narrating past action, and therefore we're invited to see that complete action in the past. Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created. Yarada eish min hashamayim, fire descended from the heavens. Note yarada, the third feminine singular form, because eish, fire, is feminine singular. Natati lecha et haaretz, I have given you the land. The verbal root is natan, and you can see that the third noon of the root has assimilated into the affirmative t. This assimilation of the noon, while normal for Hebrew, is actually rare in the perfect forms. Natan is about the only verb in which that third noon assimilates. Other third noon verbs will tend not to assimilate, but we'll see that next lesson. Amadta lifnei Adonai. You stood, amadta, before Yahweh. However, stative verbs, verbs that indicate a state of being rather than an action, normally use the perfect to express not only past state, but also present state. Ani zaganti, on the stative verbal root zagain, I am old, not I was old, although it could mean that. It will normally mean I am old. Tzadaka mimeni, she is righteous more than me. Katonti mikol hachasadim, I am small more than all of these steadfast devotions, or acts of steadfast devotion. That is, I am too small for all the acts of steadfast devotion. Note in these latter two examples the comparative use of min, and again in all three examples, stative verbs that use the perfect aspect to indicate a present state of affairs. Also, verbs of attitude, perception, knowledge use the perfect aspect to indicate a present state. So, saneti ma'asti hagechem. I hate, I despise your festivals, now in the present. Ata yadata et ha'am. You know the people. You didn't know them in the past. You know them now. Ahavti et Adoni. I love my master. I may have loved my master in the past, but the context shows that what is at issue is my current love for my master. Verbs of attitude, perception, and experience. Also using the perfect aspect to indicate a present state of affairs or present action are instantaneous verbs, or what I think of as performative utterances. For example, so I advise, ki ya'atzti. It's the perfect, but I didn't advise you in the past. I advise you now by saying this. I hereby advise that you do thus and so. Ko amar Adonai. When the prophet says, thus says the Lord, he uses amar, a perfect form, not to say that the Lord said something in the past, but that the Lord is saying it now, insofar as the prophet himself says it. The Lord hereby says, thus and so. Natati otecha al kol eretz Mitzrayim. I hereby set you over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh isn't telling Joseph that he set him over the land of Egypt in the past. He hereby now sets Joseph over the land of Egypt. Performative utterances. And finally, there is the future use of the perfect, wherein the hearer is invited to see future action not progressively as it comes into view, but rather as a complete whole. Azavti etchem, I shall abandon you. Natati ruchi alav, I will put my spirit upon him. Depending on context, we may even use the future perfect in the English. I shall have abandoned you. I will have put my spirit upon him. Avadnu, kulanu avadnu. We are ruined. All of us are ruined. Our ruin hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen in the future, but the state of affairs is fixed such that we may as well consider ourselves ruined in the present. Think of the way that we say, that a person may say, "Oh, I'm dead. Oh, I didn't study for that exam this afternoon. I'm dead." My death is, of course, postponed until the future when I take the exam, but I consider myself dead in the present. What about word order? The normal word order for finite verbs, and the perfect is the first of our finite verbs. Finite verbs are those that have person and not only gender and number. So, for instance, the participle has only gender and number, but no person. There's no such thing as a third person participle or a second person participle. Uh, the perfect has person. It's a finite verb. For finite verbs, the normal word order is the circumstance, if any, verb, subject, and then the objects, usually indirect and then direct objects. So, for example, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Bereshit, the circumstance, in the beginning. Bara Elohim, verb subject, God created. Et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, both direct objects. Az shama hamelech oleihem. Then the king listened to them. Az, the circumstance, then. Shama hamelech, verb subject, the king listened. Oleihem, to them, an indirect object expressed with a prepositional construction. Sometimes this word order is disrupted for rhetorical purposes. For instance, to introduce a new subject, a new state of affairs, a turning point in a narrative. We might expect, V'yada Adam et Chava ishto, that is, Adam knew Hava, his wife. But the Bible gives us, V'adam yada et Chava ishto. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife. A turning point in the narrative, a new paragraph, if you will. For emphasis, Ahav avihem oto michol echav. Verb, subject, word order. Their father loved him, oto, more than all his brothers. But the Bible gives us, oto ahav avihem michol echav. Him his father loved more than all his brothers. Emphasis on the direct object of the verb, and so it's fronted in the sentence. To sharpen a contrast, right? Abraham had gone and settled in one area, but Yashav Lot Ba'arei HaKibar, Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain. This would be normal word order, but to sharpen the contrast, the Bible, V'lot Yashav Ba'arei HaKibar, but Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain. Subject, verb, word order to heighten the contrast with Abraham. Similarly for parenthetical comments, again, that sense of disruption. We might expect, V'lo yada'u ki shomea Yosef. Here the verb comes first, although it's negated. Lo yada'u, they did not know that Shomea Yosef, Joseph was listening. But the narrative writes it thusly, V'hem lo yada'u ki Shomea Yosef. Now they did not know that Joseph was listening. The independent pronoun is not necessary to the sense because the verb is inflected for person, gender, and number. They knew or they did not know. But it's introduced so that the sentence can begin with a subject instead of the verb, giving us a sense of disruption. Note that the perfect is negated with lo, not, for example, with ain, which negates participles or verbless clauses. That is, there is not this nominal thing. Finally, let's look at this. We know Yerushalayim, but see Yerushalayimah. Not Mitzrayim, Egypt, but Mitzrayimah. Not Kedem, the east, but Kedma. Not Eretz, the earth, but Artsa. Not Bayit, Habayit, the house, but Habaita, toward the house, toward the land, towards the east, etc. What is the rule? An unaccented final ah, an unstressed final kametz hey may indicate motion towards something. The lack of stress is important so that you can tell this from the common feminine singular ah ending. The directive ah. Let's practice some forms. Natan Adonai Elai. Yahweh gave to me. Ha'anashim asher halachu. The men who went, or who had gone. Halachu. Yadati ki natan Adonai lachem et haaretz. I know that Yahweh has given you the land. See the present use of the perfect in a verb of perception or knowledge, yadati, and the past use of the perfect in a normal active verb, normal active transitive verb, natan. Vahu avar lifnehem, and he himself crossed over before them. Again, the pronoun is not necessary because the verb is inflected for person, gender, and number. Avar, he crossed before them. But the who adds emphasis. He himself crossed before them. Zakarti lach chesed ne'urayich. I remember, with regard to you, the devotion of your youth. See the construct chain, chesed ne'urayich. Again, a verb of perception or knowledge or attitude, zakar, remember, using the perfect to describe a present state of affairs. Artsa Mitzrayim, to the land of Egypt. You can see that the directive hey may interrupt a construct chain without breaking it. Eretz Mitzrayim, the land of Egypt. Artsa Mitzrayim, to the land of Egypt. Va'avshalom, personal name, Absalom. Va'avshalom asher mashachnu aleinu. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us. Mashachnu, we anointed. Miyom azava et haaretz. From the day when she abandoned the land. Azava, she abandoned. Atem uzavtem oti. Y'all have abandoned me. I'm going to skim through the rest without narrating so the file size doesn't get too large. Feel free to pause and practice as I flip through them. Watch the personal names on this one, of course. Note here that a compound subject, Zadok and Nathan, may take a singular verb. Bring that up in class if you like, and we'll discuss it.